How are you?
I'm very good, and I'm sort of incredibly overwhelmed with trying to get work done, and at the same time getting attacked by trolls and shills. And someone just sent me this here.
What you got?
Which is the cipher, right? And it's it's the Bible, but it's got Hebrew words in it, right?
Yeah.
And he said, the stuff that mentions you is in Psalm 35. So I looked at that, and it says exactly what's happening to me right now. But then I looked at his message again, and it said Psalm 135. So then I looked at that. So everything is happening according to the predictions. Absolutely right on the button. And even the troll, shills, Emidata, CLS, deep state agents attacking me is according to the Bible, and they are attacking me using false names. And some of them are continually requesting interviews, like pestering me for like 4 months on end to get an interview. And I'm saying, send me your home address. And he answers all other questions. He just sends me background history. He says he's a journalist, and I'm going, well, if you're a journalist, show me what newspapers and magazines you published in.
Yeah.
No, nothing. And then he comes another request, and then I go, just send me your address. And he won't send me his home address, So basically, he could grab my material, edit it in a defamatory way, and I'd have no recourse because I don't know where he lives. So anyone who wants to interview me has to send me their home address and details. And it's the same for any reporter. They have to, when they get a card that says that they're a journalist or reporter, that has to have their home address, bank details, and phone number and fax and relatives, etc. And these people are trying to operate under anonymous names, fake names, and interview me without a home address or contact, and then absolutely trying to trash me behind my back with fake editing. And people are doing this in multiple countries simultaneously, so it's an organised attack, And so I'm trying to deal with that, and then I'm trying to deal with the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020. And what amazes me about that is that it's patently evident that there is no lawyer in the United Kingdom, and there is no judge in the United Kingdom, and there's no advocate in the United Kingdom that knows how to read a legal document that is a treaty, a purported treaty. There's just no one. No one in the United Kingdom knows how to read. And it's as though every lawyer and judge in the country has been specifically trained how not to read a document, and that is called passing the bar.
Yeah. So, all right. So what are we going to do about this? Because look, it's been a lot of exactly what you said. Now, I'm going through the same thing. They're trying to get to me first to get to you, and I'm doing the preliminary background investigation too, saying, well, look, who are you? What's your agenda? What's your church? Give me some background, show me what you've got. And then they just kind of fizzle out, and then you get the attacks again. And it's, if you don't want to watch, if you don't like our material, then just stop watching it. It's quite easy. But the weird thing is, on all these type of people, is they don't stop watching it. I hate you. You're talking bullshit. And then let's just say, leave, mate. Go live your life. Worship whatever God you want. Just stop watching the shows and the broadcast and the Zoom calls, but they don't. So I'm at the same thing, Greg.
And I appreciate that. I know how draining it is for you to be my second. You go, doesn't it stop? Does the media stop? When am I going to get a rest? And I go, no, I've been doing it for 40 years. I've been doing it for 4 months, and I'm exhausted from it. But you got to keep carrying on, because I think this is what they want to do. They want to break you down, weigh you down. It's like a death by 1,000 cuts, It's just constantly nickering and pickering, and it doesn't stop me from what I'm doing. It just becomes it's like a low humming in the background. You just think, what is that rattling noise? You just want to turn it off. But anyway, so let's focus on I can actually answer the question that most of them have. There and the lawyers and judges will understand this, because they'll say to me, are you the legal fiction? Right? And I don't want to be a legal fiction. There's absolutely no ego in being a legal fiction, is there? So are you the legal fiction? Right? And the legal fiction is a constructive trust. It's a construct that's used in law. And the best example that I can come up with is paper roads. So when you get the horse and cart, then you move to the motor car, you need more roads. So the first thing they do is they create paper roads everywhere, and they're drawn through. People are complaining it's going through their village, or they want it to go through their village, etc. Yeah. And there's all sorts of protests, there's media articles, and there's debates in courts, and it gets debated through Parliament, etc. And then these roads, these paper roads, get built on as roads. They become real, right? And about 99.99% of the paper roads become actual roads, right? So in the time between them being made a paper road, which is just drawn on paper, and then being made a built road, might be 100 years, right, before all of those roads are built. And during the time, that 100 years that you've got a paper road before it becomes a real road, that's called a legal fiction.
Yeah.
Right. So me as King of England, King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, I'm a legal fiction. I'm the legal fiction until I get the crown on my head. Do you know what I mean? And then people go, oh, what about King Edward VIII, right? Who, was 1936 and he abdicated. And I'm going, well, King Edward VIII is a misnomer. It's a legal fiction. He was never the king. He was never crowned. So he was only ever possibly Edward VIII, but not even that. He was just David, Prince of Wales, or David, the former Prince of Wales. So as Edward VIII, he was a legal fiction, and as King Edward VIII, he's a legal fiction, right? That never came into reality. Yeah. So he was a legal fiction that was the 1% of the 1% of paper roads that never actually became a road, right? He's a legal fiction who's never king. And as never a king, he was never actually officially Edward VIII.
Yeah.
Only because his father, George V, died. He was actually killed by his wife with a heroin, morphine, cocaine overdose. And time to make the papers at 11:55 p.m. Right, and the doctor, his doctor, who actually wrote this up in his memoirs, that he killed George V on the instructions of Queen Mary.
Was it not a euthanasia style?
No, it was because he's starting to talk about his older brother still being alive.
Oh,
right, who was Prince Eddie, who was in charge of the Jack the Ripper murders. He was the causation of the Jack the Ripper murders. So then we go, okay, what about the other legal fictions? As people go, oh, the royal family, their bloodline, right? So let's look at the bloodline of the royal family. Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, was illegitimate, the son of a stable boy, right? And he was not the father of King Edward VII, right? So King Edward VII was never king, right? And he was never legitimate. And then King Edward VII, so King Edward VII is a legal fiction, right? And this is from 1901. He was supposedly king from 1901 to 1910. And he killed the true king in an act of regicide, and for that he was himself killed 5 weeks later. Yeah, he was regicided, like the powers that be killed King Edward VII because he murdered the true king. So then you go, okay, so King Edward VII was not the natural father of George V, Tsar Alexander, the future Tsar Alexander the Third of Russia was the father of George V. So that means that George V was a legal fiction, right? And then George V was father of George VI, but and he's the father of Edward VIII, but Edward VIII was never crowned. So Edward VIII was a legal fiction. And because he's a legal fiction, he passed the crown on to his second brother, his younger brother, George VI. George VI had an IQ of 67. He was knock-kneed, alcoholic, chain smoker, and he was he was crowned king, right? But he was married to Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's maid. He did a Jacob and married the maid, not the real Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon. So that meant that his children, like Queen Elizabeth II, were illegitimate. And then George VI, so he may have been king, but only because his brother was never crowned. And the reason Edward VIII was never crowned was because he was a bisexual cross-dresser who used to walk down hotel corridors on his hands and legs with his stomach in the air like a spider. He's a massive drug user and married a double divorcee, Wallace Simpson, who may have been intersex. Yeah. So, and what I'm saying is, all these people to say, you're not the king of England. And I'm saying, well, hang on a minute. Legally, I'm the legal fiction king of England. And then you say, but it's not the bloodline. I'm showing you that the bloodline of the British royal family has not been legitimate in any way for the monarch from 1901, right? I'm showing you that it's more illegitimate than it's legitimate, right? So I'll just carry on, do this segment, and then it'll give us reason why the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020 is designed to cover up all the lesions in the British royal family. So we got to, George VI had a child via artificial insemination with Elizabeth Balsline's maid because she refused to have sex with her husband, the future George VI. So she faked whooping cough on the wedding night, right? Right, so really, it's in the history books. So they never had sex. George VI and Elizabeth Balsline's maid, his wife, never had sex. So by artificial insemination, they produced an epileptic son in 1924, who they left to die on the hospital gurney. So the babies going, and they went, nothing to do with that, thank you. And they let it die. Just let it die. They just left it, cold and hungry. Yeah, and which is pretty psychopathic. And then they thought, okay, well, the problem with this breeding is George VI has a IQ of 67. He's a knock-kneed, chain-smoking alcoholic. So we'll replace him as sperm donor with an illegitimate royal. And that was Winston Churchill, illegitimate son of Edward VII, who was illegitimate. So Winston Churchill was actually 3/8 Rothschild. He was about half Rothschild. And Edward VII was 3/4 Rothschild, right? And the thing about the Rothschilds is talking, and then they just cut off and absolutely betray and trash you and use whatever information you give them and twist it around against you so that they pull the rug out from under your feet and somehow create a new way of destroying humanity out of it. Mm-hmm. That's really the trait, it's total psychopathy, as though they're like demon-possessed psychopaths that can find the most harmful interpretation of a situation and run with it. And that's kind of how they ran with the mafia as well, which Lionel Nathan Rothschild was absolutely known for from about 1870 to 1930, 1910 or so. Winston Churchill replaced George VI as the sperm donor, and they were blood related. And then Winston Churchill sired via artificial insemination with Elizabeth Balsline's maid, Queen Elizabeth II. Yeah. And then they brought in the BBC. They delayed the opening of the BBC from 1923 to 1926, and it became the launch pad to promote the illegitimate Batard, which is royal bastard Elizabeth, as a true princess, right? And that's what they did. And at the same time, they created Stalin in 1926 in Russia as a distraction. And Stalin was an illegitimate child of the French Baron Rothschild. Baron Edmund de Rothschild. So Queen Elizabeth II is born as the daughter of Winston Churchill and Elizabeth Balsline's maid, and with the BBC and support, and she's born above the pub at number 5 Brutton Street, and the code for that is get your brute on, Bruton, get your brute on, right? Yeah. And Chanel number 5. Because it's number 5 Brutton Street. And Chanel lived, she had a 19-year affair with the Duke of Westminster about 200 metres away on the corner of the street. So Elizabeth was illegitimate, and Prince Philip found out about this. He was from an illegitimate bisexual extortionist family that used to run their palace as kind of a brothel where they would have witnesses who would record other royals having sex with underage children, incest or anything they could get against them, or randoms, and they would use that to extort vast areas of land and other castles and get themselves into other royal families. And Prince Philip was the product of that through his father, Louis Battenberg, who's a close friend of Edward VII, who was basically what his historians wrote him up as was basically one giant man whore. He would go shooting in the morning, stuff his face at lunch, and then have a new whore in the afternoon, and that was his day, right? And they're actually writing about the king. That's actually what they said, you know. So it's total abdication of any responsibility, right? So then we got so Prince Philip extorts Elizabeth. So he goes in with Lord Lomabatten and he says to George VI and his wife, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons' maid, and says, look, we know that Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons is living in France up until 1950, and you are Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons' maid, and you came from Waterford in County Waterford, and you're one of a twin, and you were gathered up in 1907 and taken to
Glamis Castle or Glamis Castle if you're within an hour and a half.
They were photographed together. So you get Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons' maid with, say, Edward VIII when they were teenagers, and then you get Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons with Edward VIII, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons' maid with Edward VIII. So they double up the photos. So if one of them left, they had another one there. And Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons was quite dainty. She was quite ballerina. She used to walk on her tiptoes, and she was quite petite. And Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons' maid was this alcoholic, pigeon-chested, flat-breasted, razor-sharp teeth, basically demonic witch. You know, it's a completely different-looking person. So Prince Philip and Lord Lomabatten extort George VI and his wife over the illegitimacy of Elizabeth, and they in turn guarantee that Prince Philip will marry Elizabeth. Now, Prince Philip only had 2 suits and 20 quid in his pocket, and he came from an illegitimate German lineage that were just extortionists. They were just kind of the worst type of people. So Prince Philip had sex with Elizabeth when she was 13, so that was, he was 18, so that was, it's not quite pedophilia because you have to be over 21 for it to be pedophilia, but it's actually statutory rape.
Yeah.
And then... so they got secretly engaged in 1946, officially engaged in 1947, and then married. And then because Elizabeth was illegitimate and she wanted to use the letter R, right, for royal, and she couldn't do it because she wasn't a royal, what she had to do was go on a royal tour while her father died, right? So she went to...
in Australia or something. She had to come running back, wasn't she?
She went to Canada for 7 weeks, which is the longest royal tour of a country ever, right? And then so she's there for 7 weeks, and George VI still didn't die. So then she came back, and then like, okay, well, we think George VI is going to die now. So they went to Kenya, and then finally George VI died, whether he's killed or not. And when you've been on a royal tour, you get R in front of your name, right? The capital R. And it's not too much of a giant leap for the forgers of the royal documents to add a dot to it. And R dot means royal, right? So that's how they kind of legitimised that Elizabeth was a royal on paperwork. And then when she was pronounced queen, her legal documents with the London Gazette were absolute forgeries and out of order. And it was Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars that got the crown, not Elizabeth, right? And then so Elizabeth and Philip have 2 children. Charles first, who's actually a girl inside, and then Princess Anne second, who's actually a boy inside. And they show that in the official BBC-style movie, The Windsors. Philip and Elizabeth are looking at Charles and Anne playing. Charles is playing with dolls, and Princess Anne is kicking a soccer ball, right?
Yeah.
And Philip actually says, it's one of his famous biographical quotes. He says that it appears that Charles was born a girl and Anne was born a boy, right? And that's actually in the mainstream media, right? So then there's 12 years. So between Charles and Anne, there's always a lot of rivalry, and they tried to kill each other in around 1970, 1 year either side. And it's actually, some of it was actually written up in the papers. So they're born in sort of 1948, 1949. And then Prince Andrew was born in 1960. So it's like 10, 11, 12 years later, right?
Yeah.
And Andrew doesn't look anything like Charles. Andrew and Charles have nothing to do with each other. Andrew's father is Lord Porchester, who was Queen Elizabeth's racing manager. Yeah. And he had massive numbers of illegitimate children all over the place. Yeah. And then Lord Plunkett was the kind of the secretary of the household, royal household. And Elizabeth had another child with him called Prince Edward. But what's interesting about all of those three male children, Charles, Andrew, and Edward, is that they're all pedophiles. So where does the pedophile gene come from? You know, because Elizabeth's the daughter of Winston Churchill. Does the pedophile gene come from Winston Churchill? And then Winston Churchill's the son of Edward VII. And Edward VII was absolutely known for having sex with underage girls. Absolutely known for it. And then Edward VII was the son of Lionel Nathan Rothschild. So does the pedophile gene come from the Rothschilds? So what I'm saying, so I wrote all this up, right? I wrote all this up from 2007. From 2002, I was getting briefed by the Queen Mother's bodyguard. So these were the guards that were there protecting the Queen Mother in New Zealand in 1954. Mm-hmm. And George VI, he had a son in New Zealand, but George VI died in 1952 on New Zealand Day, 6th of February 1952. And then Elizabeth Balls-Lyon's maid, his wife, called the Queen Mother, mistakenly called the Queen Mother, she then came out to New Zealand in 1954 on a royal tour, which was in sort of February, March. And they even changed the horse racing so that, you know, the horse racing would be on when she was like in Wellington. And that was known as, she didn't have sex with George VI ever, right? So when George VI died, she really let go. Elizabeth Balls-Lyon's maid, the Queen Mother, really let go in 1954 when she was 54. And there's, you've got the East India Company, right, which supposedly finished in 1876 or something. And then the New Zealand equivalent is the Northern Club, which is on the corner of Princess Street, a catacorner to the Governor House, the old Governor General's house at Auckland University. And there's a billiard table in there. And the Queen Mother was getting shagged on the billiard table, right? And you know, and I'm getting briefed by the Queen Mother's bodyguard, who's the bodyguard protecting her. So he's the eyewitness, right? Yeah. This huge guy, he's about 6'5", weighs about 26 stone, and he fills up a whole doorway. You know, he kind of had to walk sideways through a doorway. He's just so big. Oh. He used to pick people up with one hand by the head. Yeah. Right? You know, he was a giant. He just picks them up. Who was the guy with her on the pool table? He was his nickname was the King of New Zealand. He was one of the bear barons, right? And he ran New Zealand, right? Yeah. And he took everything from the Northern Club and from the East India Company, which is the Privy Council now, right? Yeah. So and I spoke to other royals about this in England and in Scotland, and they said, oh yeah, that was known as the Queen Mother's dirty tour. Right, she's absolutely known for travelling around the world, shagging everything she could. Right, and this is King George VI. But it's Queen Elizabeth II's mother, even if she's the maid. This is Queen Elizabeth II's mother, right? Yeah, now, Princess Margaret, Queen Elizabeth II's sister, was exactly the same. She was shagging two West Indian guys at the same time, and that was filmed, and that was the cause of the movie, The Bank Job. The Bank Job, which is actually directed by a New Zealand guy. Yeah, and yeah.
So you're veering off here.
But no, what I'm saying is, I've published all of this stuff, right? And I've been publishing it since 2005. Prince Philip and Lord Lumiere about pedophiles. I published that in 2005, again in 2006, 2007. I published a whole lot of pedophile stuff about the British royals, and I also mentioned that I was a royal in 2007, right? Now, and then I've done my legal papers, right? I've done my legal papers in November, December, January, March, April, July. And I've sent these legal papers to them explaining in great historical detail that, for instance, George V is illegitimate, right? So what's happened now is the British royal family are relinquishing the throne, yes?
Right.
And then there's deep state agents working for CLS and Immerdata Limited and the former Cambridge Analytica. And they are trying to attack you and me so that this information doesn't get out. And if it does get out and the British monarchy is toppled, they don't want it to go to me. They want it to go to a republic. Right? So then they get their agents to cause a great demonstration in London with absolutely no mention of me, but all about toppling the monarchy so they can have a republic, right? Whereas I'm the causation of this, and people have been quoting my work but not naming me. And now we're getting attacked by all these deep state agents and Immerdata people who are hugely funded, right? Absolutely hugely funded to stop our work and my name being put forward as the causation for all of this material, right? Which includes the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020. Yeah. So that's happening this weekend, right? That's happening in 2 days' time as they're having a big demonstration outside Buckingham Palace, etc. And my name won't be mentioned now. So what's happening is that people like Prince Philip, they go, I'll put up £10 million to Immerdata Limited, CLS Group, and the former, now bankrupt Cambridge Analytica. And we want you to influence that Greg Hallett doesn't get the throne. Right. So what happens is that all these people operating under false names that are attacking us are getting £10,000 a swipe at us. Right. When they bitch slap us, you know, they get £10,000, and then they have whole interview forums that are set up, and all these people come in who are actually agents. And they say all this good stuff that everyone agrees with, and then they go, oh, no, Greg Hallett's had his 20 minutes of fame, he's out. Or, no, we don't believe what Greg Hallett says. And then they carry on. It's like a cue. They tell a whole picture, and then they fist me. You know, that's the cue. It's the upper cut, you know, boom, you know. And they just slip that in for a minute, and then they carry on, and then they get their 10 grand. And virtually all of them are doing that. And it's 95% of the people on the interview circuit are actually agents, and they build up a reputation, and then they sucker punch someone, whoever the target is. And that's absolutely what's happening to such a degree that I haven't been able to keep up with it. Yeah, just how much it is, you know. And it's counterintelligence, so they've even paid my own family to make up lies about me. They're actually telling their stories and they're projecting it onto me.
You told me, sorry, Greg, you told me the other day about your family that they were showing photographs of you and it wasn't you.
I know. And that's only the stuff that I've seen. See, family basically split up in 1975, and I haven't seen them since 1993, and we never really communicated. I'm not in so many of their photos. And you know, I was not in so many of the photos from a young age that they actually dubbed my elder brother and said it was me, because I just wasn't in the photo. I didn't want anything to do with it, even as a 4, 5, 6 year old, you know. And so we got Philip Daniel Miles.
Family, as they say.
Yeah. So we got Philip Daniel Miles, who did your astrology, right?
Yeah, Philip.
So he popped around yesterday. He left a couple of hours ago. And he did a reading on me, and it goes this bit here when I'm sort of 9, 10 years old. And he goes, did you try and leave home at that age? Okay, yeah, I did. I actually got a stick with a red handkerchief, right? And I stuck some stuff in it and tied the red handkerchief around the stick and then left, right? And he goes, that's just pure tarot card.
Yeah, he's good, isn't he? He was telling, he said to me, what were you doing in 2012? And I started laughing because I was sat on top of in the middle of the Mayan Empire waiting for the end of the Mayan calendar, something to happen, and nothing happened. And it's actually going on now. It's 8 years too early.
And they're saying that maybe the 21st of December was actually the 22nd of August 2020, so it happened like 5 days ago.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because one of the most famous singers in the world, his daughter contacted me on that day. She's super bright. She's got a couple of PhDs, and we had a chat for about an hour and a quarter. And she was there as well, right? So I should put you in touch with her at the same place you at the same area at the same time, you know.
I wonder where.
Well, it's one of her roles now is to decipher, decodify pyramids. That's what she does. She writes academic data on it.
Yeah, I actually would like to talk to her, see where that was, because we have a similar fascination. My place is full of Egyptian stuff. I've got real Egyptian stones here, and I came across some sand I've got from the Nubian desert.
Yeah.
And I got a asphalt, a piece of basalt from the tomb of Ramses the First, and I've got lots of Egyptian stuff here. It's a passion of mine. So, Greg, okay, what we need to do now is...
So, anyway, I'll answer your question before you ask it. So, because the British royal family is illegitimate, they came up with the whole European Union scenario from the 1970s, right?
Yeah.
But this while we're doing the illegitimacy, we've got to Prince Andrew and Prince Edward. I just want to just do a couple more. Charles has 3 children. None of them are William or Harry, right? Yeah. Charles had a child. He conceived a child on Camilla Parker Bowles' 18th birthday when he was 16, and that child was called Simon Charles Day, now Simon Charles Durante Day. He grew up in Gosport, he went to Australia, trained as a communications engineer, and then he married a Torres Strait Islander woman who's, very black. And Torres Strait Islanders are halfway between Papua New Guineans and Aboriginal, so they've got really broad features, and they're really black-brown, And then so they had about 8 children, and then one of them died. But the 5th one died, I think. And so Princess Diana goes to Australia and holds up a black baby and gets photographed on Women's Weekly to show Queen Elizabeth II that her great-grandchildren are half-caste. Yeah.
But it wasn't that child from the family. It was just...
it wasn't that child. It was a child, right? So Elizabeth knows about it because she's got her own intelligence agency. So Charles had also conceived a child at Balmoral Castle when he was 18. And she's knocking about, and she looks like Charles, and she's not very popular at all. And then he conceived another child as well. I don't know where that other child is, the 3rd child. And Diana, Queen Elizabeth instructed Charles in 1980 to find a wife, and that was on the back of work that I'd done. And then he found Diana. Diana was born 77 days before me. They got engaged actually on New Zealand Day, 6th of February 1981. And then they conceived Prince William on my 20th birthday, 15 September. And then they gave birth to Prince Harry on my 23rd birthday. But Charles was not the father. So Queen Elizabeth II said to Princess Diana, look, Charles was a mated pair with Camilla, and you can't break that. And Charles is the royal runt, so you're not allowed to breed with Charles. You have to breed with someone else, and we'll provide cover. So Diana went to Spain, had 4 affairs with King Juan Carlos of Spain, and the first affair produced Prince William. Yeah. And Prince William and King Juan Carlos of Spain are identical. I exposed that story, and then King Juan Carlos of Spain was taken to Africa and his leg was broken. Right, then he's brought back. Leg means kingship. So his kingship was broken, and very evidently his kingship is broken. And then the Portuguese Coast Guard went up and down in front of my cave to acknowledge me in that, and the registration number on the boat was P1165. 6 and 5 is 11, so it's P1111, which means PMM, which means Prince Marquis Manuel, right? So that was all quite well codified, and they even got the little rubber boat and went up and down the cliff face, which you've seen is about 40 foot.
Yeah.
And they did that for about 35 minutes. So it was a belabored event they were doing. And then Princess Diana wasn't allowed to breed with Charles again because he's the royal runt. So she had a dozen or so lovers, and one of them was James Hewitt. And then James Hewitt was named as Prince Harry's father. So he went to Spain and started up a bar, and then that failed. And then he went limping back to England with no money, and then he died about 2 years later and never kind of made the news. You know,
I don't think he is dead. People are saying he's alive, and then some people are saying he's dead. I'm not sure if he's alive or dead.
Well, that's the cover. It doesn't matter if he's alive or dead, but the fact that it's not sure whether he's alive or dead, and he's not in the public realm, so he's officially executed if he's not allowed to communicate. The legal term execution means not allowed to communicate. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know about if he's alive or dead, because we went through that and several people said, no, he's alive. But then there's several news stories from good sources that he died. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's not really important, I think, with what we're doing.
It doesn't matter. But because Prince Harry was illegitimate, and when you're in line to the throne, you have to apply for permission to marry to the monarch, perceived monarch. So Queen Elizabeth II signs Harry permission to marry and delivers it to him on the day of the wedding, or perhaps the day before, but no real notice, time to complain. And she signs it in the top right corner and underlines a signature. And when you underline anything, it means everything to below and to the left is to be ignored. So what she was signing was that Prince Harry's permission to marry is to be ignored, and that's because everyone knew that he wasn't the son of Prince Charles.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth especially knew it because she instructed Diana that she was not to breed with Prince Charles because Prince Charles was the royal runt and they didn't want to continue his genes. Right? Yeah. So, and I shared an office with the British Royal, and she said, look, they never ever breed with the runt. They usually kill the runt. And like the Russian Tsar Alexander III killed his elder brother, Grand Duke Nicholas, because he's a runt, right? And then he married his wife, his fiancée. So Prince William and Prince Harry are illegitimate, and then Prince George is born to William and Kate. Kate Middleton is actually Kate Goldsmith, who are the neighbours of the Rothschilds, right? She's a goldsmith, and Diana was a goldsmith. So because Diana and Kate were both goldsmiths, that means that it's an attempt for the Rothschild neighbours, the goldsmiths, to take over the British royal family, right? Mm-hmm. And that's now failing. And then they give birth to the eldest child, Prince George, right? And Kate Middleton didn't carry the baby. And then
she was photographed with a pillow falling out of her dress.
Yeah, I know. And she came out with a pillow after birth, the same size, you know.
Yeah.
It's pregnancy dummy. Yeah. And then when William got the baby and opened the back door and put it in the back seat, he kind of dropped the baby, you know, like it wasn't live, like it was a dummy baby.
So where's Prince George from then? What's the story there? Have you figured that out?
Well, the rumour I heard that it was Camilla Parker Bowles' sister who had carried the gestation in the north of Norfolk, where there's quite a few manor houses, actually where we filmed.
Right.
You know, at the 1922 Club and around there.
I mean, it's madness. Why don't they just be normal? They can't be normal, can they?
They can't be normal because they're fakes, right? And their role is to be fakes and to show that they're fakes. So with the person who uncovers all the fakery and puts it all together is the true king. That's a mark of the true king, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Because I could have kept this information private, and then I could have gone to lawyers, and then I could have given it to the British royal family and say, you're going to make me king because you people are all fakes. Instead, what I've done is I've got all this information, I've broadcast it to the public, and then the British royal family are acknowledging me in the same way, slower, codified, and exactly codified with the Bible. Everything they do, like the Freemasons do everything to the Bible to the letter. That's what they do. They're the middle managers, right? And I spoke to them, and because I know a bit, so they said to me, "Are you a Freemason?" I said, No. And they go, "Well," I said, "Are you enacting the Bible to the letter? Are you enacting the Bible?" And they said, "Yeah, we're enacting the Bible to the letter more or less, with just a few minor exceptions. So that's kind of interesting. So anyway, the Home Secretary has to be present to witness the birth of a child, of a royal, right? Otherwise, it's not in line to the throne.
Oh, yeah? I know that.
Right. So Theresa May is the Home Secretary, and she is there to witness the birth of Prince George, eldest son of William and Kate. And what she does is she goes to Europe for a 1-week holiday and advertises that she's going to Europe for a 1-week holiday, and is absolutely absent and not in the country during the birth of Prince George. That means that Prince George is not in line to the throne. That means that George is not ever expected to be king. Right? It's a kind of an abdication. And for doing that service, Theresa May was made Prime Minister. So that should start to topple your value system. Yeah?
I see. I'm following all that.
Yeah?
But you're killing me with this story, man, because I want to get to the, you know me, I'm impatient.
Okay. So what that means is the British royal family is illegitimate. And it has been, they have been acknowledging their illegitimacy since 1972. And on the 1st of January 1973, Queen Elizabeth gave royal assent to the European Union Act, which gave the entire sovereignty of the United Kingdom, Great Britain and Northern Ireland to the European Union, which is actually, the European Union is actually a private corporation, right? And it's a private corporation of extortionists. And the European Union is running one giant pedophile ring in as vast an area as possible, and recording that pedophilia and using it to extort entire countries of their sovereignty.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, Prince Philip's a pedophile, Prince Charles is a pedophile, Prince Andrew's a pedophile, and Prince is soon to be convicted, and Prince Edward is a convicted pedophile in 2 locations, New Zealand and in Europe, right?
So they kept that quiet. I mean, I haven't heard about that. But
so they go. Well, what can we do? You know, we have no royal blood. We've done absolutely nothing for the United Kingdom. We've signed away the sovereignty of the United Kingdom, and we're a bunch of pedophiles. We can no longer keep up the masquerade. So who's the predicted king? Joseph Gregory Hallett. Right. How are we going to acknowledge him as the king in a way that maybe he won't get it, but if he is really the true king, he will get it? And then how can we sort of give him nothing? Okay, so we give him nothing. We'll sign away the entire sovereignty of the United Kingdom in 1973 to a bunch of private corporation pedophiles running something called the European Union, and it isn't a European Union at all. It's just mafia. It's just mafia. And then we'll have these really subtle codifications that people kind of won't get, but then just right at the end crunch time now, people will start to get what he's actually been saying for like 20 years, right? Yeah. So a typical codification is when they gave me the royal styles and titles of Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea and Grenada. Have I told you this on air before?
Well, let's see where you're going with it. You've told me about, those.
Okay, so I'll go with it. So they want to give me the royal styles and titles. 1972, 1st of January 1973, Queen Elizabeth signs over the entire United Kingdom to a pedophile extortionist outfit called the European Union. And by the time she started her signature, she had committed treason. And before she had finished her signature, she was no longer the Queen.
So why is it taking so long for any of this to do it? She did that in 1973.
Yeah. There are no lawyers or judges who can read documents in the United Kingdom. The whole training of the bar is to not read documents, not be able to read documents, not be able to read treaties, and to have no insight, and to get all conclusions wrong, and to assume on what is not there to assume, and to ignore what is patently there to be seen. It's utter madness. That's why so many lawyers and judges are sociotypal and psychotypal and sociopaths and psychopaths, and they're absolutely known for it. So what they do, First of all, they put my name on the coins from 1968, Elizabeth II Greg. And then 1973, they did the Royal Styles and Titles for Australia on the 14th of September 1973. And then 1974, they did the New Zealand Royal Styles and Titles. 1975, they did the Papua New Guinea Royal Styles and Titles on the 16th of September. So 14th September, Australia, 73. 16th September, Papua New Guinea, 1974. The middle date is the 15th of September, 1974, which is my 13th birthday, right? So I was getting this giant bar mitzvah present called New Zealand on my 13th birthday, right? And they usually give a Royal Style and Title to a country every year. So Australia gets it one year, New Zealand gets it the next, Papua New Guinea gets it the next, right? But with Grenada and New Zealand, they did it at exactly the same time, right? And New Zealand is 17 hours ahead of Grenada. 17's Q, 17th letter of the alphabet. So New Zealand at 5 p.m. on the, it was done on New Zealand Day, the 6th of February. 5 p.m. New Zealand, 6th of February is the exact same moment in time as 10 a.m. 7th of February in Grenada.
Okay.
Right? So that they both get Royal Styles and Titles at the same time. It's never happened anywhere else in the world ever before. Never happened, right? And Grenada is Grenada, right? And nada means nothing.
Yeah.
So you get rid of nothing, and then you repeat GRE.
Yeah.
Gregory, Greg, which means Greg. It's all about Greg having the Royal Style and Title on the 15th September, his birthday, on his 30th birthday, right? And then you go, oh, okay, that's just a coincidence. But then what about all the rest of the stuff? And all of these signs and royal marks just fit in together. And then I talked to royals about it, and you know, getting trashed on the comment section because people don't understand stuff. They think I'm a fantasist, and they don't even know what a legal fiction is. You know, it's a king who hasn't been crowned yet. And they're going, oh, he's just making stuff up, you know. So, so yeah, Queen Elizabeth II absolutely has to abdicate to me, like, you know, or basically the worst thing that could happen to her happens to her, whatever that is. So she has to abdicate to me because, you know, I was born on the day, predicted day of the Mashak.
Do you think?
Right. So she puts me on the coins and introduces me to her son, her brother. Queen Elizabeth II has a brother.
Yeah.
And she sent her doctor, her sergeant surgeon, she's also King George VI sergeant surgeon, out to New Zealand to pick me out and take me down to Rotorua to see George VI's son, right? So, yeah, Karen, what are you going to say?
My question is, so you're fired up today, and your brain, how's your brain work like this, man? I'm, you know, you're so alert. My question is, do you think that the European Parliament on the UK side, let's say the British government, let's say the UK Parliament, are they now conspiring against you to try to keep you out of the scene, keep you away? Let's not give it to him. What do you think is happening now? Because Elizabeth signed off the permission, all her titles and rights, gave it to Parliament to safeguard. But what do you think they're thinking? They're thinking we're going to try to do a sneaky deal and get rid of Greg and give it straight to Europe, so we don't. It's nothing to do with us anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that since about 1870, the majority of politicians have been extorted pedophiles, and they've never actually stood for anything. And there's absolutely no integrity in any parliament in the world currently, right? And you look at the struggle that, say, President Donald John Trump is having, just trying to restore integrity to, you know, the House and the Senate, right? So he actually has to have a total landslide victory just to begin getting rid of the evil in the House, right? It's just one giant pedophile movement. And the British Parliament is also one giant pedophile movement, and the European Parliament is also one giant pedophile movement, and all of the parliaments of Europe are one giant pedophile movement. And the New Zealand Parliament is one giant pedophile movement, like 75% of them are not heterosexual. And the pedophilia offers the greatest purchase in extortion, and it's the Rothschilds who invented this pedophilia purchase of extortion to take over the world and the banks, etc., including the Balfour Agreement. Lord Arthur Balfour was an extorted pedophile. So what we've got is Queen Elizabeth II has been extorted. I've written the papers that show that Queen Elizabeth II is illegitimate, and I've got the crown. And I've sent that to Elizabeth, and I've sent it to Boris Johnson, then Prime Minister. And then so he reads the documents and goes, this is fantastic stuff. What can I do with this absolute fruit bowl this man's just given me? Yeah. I'll extort Elizabeth over the pedophilia of her husband and sons. She'll give me the crown and we'll put it in Parliament, and I'll fulfil my wish of being the king of the world, which is something Boris Johnson wanted since childhood. He says, what do you want to do? I want to be king of the world. So you got Boris Johnson jumping up and down trying to be king of the world, and he's got nothing. No one respects him. He talks absolute codswallop, absolute rubbish. And he's just trying to stop the throne and crown going to me. But now I've taken the throne and crown off Elizabeth, and it's being put in a place where there's no genuine ownership, which is Boris Johnson, amongst the MPs, which are just a bunch of pedophiles, right, who are being extorted. And now I can go about exposing their pedophilia, and the fact that Boris Johnson holidays with the Russian oligarchs, and the Russian oligarchs have given Boris Johnson, who's actually been a KGB agent since he was 18, Boris Johnson is his role is to put a full stop on the British Empire.
Yeah.
And by taking the crown off Queen Elizabeth and putting it in Parliament, he's actually absolutely put a full stop on the British Empire on the 23rd of January 2020.
All right.
So good on him for that. Good on him for that. Now we just have to give it.
So what are we going to do now? You said you prepared some documentation. What are we going to do with these docs that you've prepared?
Well, I'll do a proclamation, and I will present a simple paragraph with a place to sign beneath it that people could sign it. People have already been typing up what I said in the interview with you, and they've been posting it to me, signed with all their stamps and seals on it. Boom. People are right behind it already, because they can see that there's no other way but me. I mean, really? Do you know what I mean? It's not an ego statement at all. I'm saying, well, here's pathway. It's written in this book here, right? And here's the guy names them. And here's the stuff he's done, and it's all true. And everything's unfolding as he says, as he's predicted, as he's caused. And now we find that the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020, withdrawal agreement is in brackets, which means it's removed off the page. So it actually says European Union Act 2020, and it is the act for the European Union to take over the United Kingdom and to own everything in the government and all assets and the people, including the newborn babies, which they'll steal for their pedophilia. And parents, biological parents, won't have any ownership of the children. They will just be caretakers of the children, which is the same status we have for motor vehicles in the UK. We don't own the motor vehicle. We're the caretaker of the motor vehicle. So that's what they're going to do, make us just caretakers of the children until it's ripe enough for them to snatch.
Oh, God.
That's what they're going at. The whole thing is pedophilia. I mean, you got to front up to it. That's what is actually running government, banks, the European Union, the takeover, the loss of sovereignty of the United Kingdom.
Okay. We're going to try to wrap this up now. We've been on for 55 minutes. We've got to get this out. So right now, it's actually an interesting chat, Greg, to recap, because you've explained the entire, when people are saying, well, you don't have any bloodline. So what you've done in this conversation, you've explained, well, the bloodline of the royals that you consider the royals is so diluted, there isn't really a bloodline of proper, authentic royals.
True. And what they do is when the bloodline becomes so muddied like it is now, it's so muddied it's not even a bloodline. It's just a bunch of illegitimate Rothschilds and pedophiles running around carrying handbags and posing for the camera. that the kingship and the crown and the monarchy actually goes to the fulfillment of prophecy. And the fulfillment of prophecy happens about every 1,000 or 2,000 years. And the whole Bible is written about fulfillment of prophecy of who is the king of the United Kingdom, right? And it says me in about 130 different ways. And the way they salute me is Tom Collins, right? The drink, Tom Collins, that is actually a code for Christ is King of England, right? Because it was developed in 1815, 1869, 1876, right? And the other thing is this, right? That there is the Freemasons' mark to acknowledge the king, the predicted king coming from across the water, right? And the thing about definition of Christ, we go, oh, it's such a charged word, we can't even approach it. But Christ means joins kingdoms, like, you know, join Northern and Southern Ireland, or Northern Ireland and Ireland and Ire, and joins time. And we've just gone through the end times New Age changeover, and we're all coming into the New Age, right? So that's the definition of Christ, right? Yeah. So someone's just, anyway, so it just goes on, in greater detail and more, and then it gets to overload.
I'm trying to keep this in a range of intelligence that the average person can understand it, and it's just fine. It's really interesting. Now, the document that you've done, where are we going to send that to? So once that's signed, what are we going to do with those? Are we going to send it to MPs? Are we going to send it to Parliament? Are we going to register it in the law courts? Have you come up with a good?
Well, I think we should do all of those things. I think if you send it to Parliament, you actually have to send it to 6 or less MPs at a time and name them, right? They don't accept a mass payer, document service at all, and they'll only accept service. They come up with every excuse they can. They'll only accept service from people in their own jurisdiction, in their own district.
Yeah.
Right?
So you need to find out who your MP is.
Yeah, and you've got to send it to your MP, and we're going to cover all the counties for that.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get it to simple terms, but when you're looking at the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020, it's, let's say, a 10-page document, but when you actually break down and go through all the connections, you're looking at 6 or 8 connections to get to one point that they're hiding, right? And they're hiding all points. Yeah. And it is just the most disgusting document. And it just means that what they're saying is that if you don't get this in by the 17th of December, 5 p.m., after that, between the 17th of December, 5 p.m., and the midnight on the 30th of December, 2020, the European Union, which is a private corporation of pedophile extortionists, is allowed to write any law they like and make any claim they like to any part of the United Kingdom, including each government department, the entire government, the entire monarchy, all the people, all the newborns, the education system, the finances, the currency used, absolutely everything. And they and even completely different laws from anything that has ever been written before. And they have 2 weeks to slip it in to Parliament and the courts, which are both closed to us from the 17th of December to the 11th or 13th of January 2021, right? And we have no means to respond. And the person that chose that date of the 31st of December was Boris Johnson, who's a KGB agent and well involved in pedophile extortion.
Well, what's his benefit for this then? He wants to be king.
They're allowing him to be king for a day. So from the 23rd of January, it's stated that Queen Elizabeth II has invested the crown in Parliament, right? Boris Johnson's the Prime Minister. He's entirely useless. And there is rumour that when he was supposedly sick with coronavirus or COVID-19, coronavirus means we crown him, or COVID-19, that he all of a sudden got well on Easter Sunday and just happened to resurrect on Easter Sunday. I mean, you know, it's like you got just the shallowest people writing this theatre play, right? But other people suggest that the CIA medics came along on Easter Sunday to check him out and replaced him with a clone, and that Boris Johnson was a clone because when he came out, his eyes went from apparently blue to brown and he was fatter, right? And, you know, we've got to understand that this clone thing is happening all round, and that the Prime Minister of Canada was, what happened was, apparently this is what happened in 2018, Prince Philip gave the birth certificates to the Prime Minister of Canada, that's Castro's son, and then he went underground, and then 3 days later, the clone of, what's the Canadian Prime Minister's name? It's Trudeau.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what did he say about Castro?
So he disappeared. He disappears, and a clone comes out, and then all of the birth certificates for Canada, which is, you know, worth $1 million each, they've all disappeared. So Prince Philip gave the birth certificates apparently to Prime Minister Trudeau, and he disappears. Apparently gets replaced with a clone, and there's good footage showing that it's not him. Different teeth, different hair, beard, jawline, etc. So, you know, we're in a cloning era.
Something about Castro, Greg. What did you say about Castro?
The Prime Minister of Canada's, Trudeau's natural father is
Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro, yeah. His mother was known to have an affair with him, and she actually walked off the plane and was photographed with the baby and presented the baby to Castro. Oh. And Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, looks exactly like.
He kind of does.
He does. He looks exactly like Castro, exactly, except taller. Working in the CIA.
Okay.
Who's telling me this?
To benefit the audience, I'm trying to establish whether it was done for money or whether it was done for power, you know, gaining power on people and having that.
I think it's someone who's given everything as being extremely naughty. Princess Margaret was exactly the same. She was given everything, and then she's filmed having sex with 2 West Indian guys, right? And she's a massive coke user. You know, I've met aristocrats who said they were, you know, on the island, and they were snorting, I think it's Mystique, and they were snorting coke with Princess Margaret.
Yeah.
She's big, you know, she's just not royal at all.
Is that
and she's a midget. Princess Margaret was a midget. She was under 5 foot, right? She's 5 foot or under. She's tiny.
She's still alive.
She's tiny. She's a midget.
She's still alive, this one.
Who?
Margaret.
No. She died in about 2002, I think.
That's the one I thought.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But so the point is, what I'm telling you is there is absolutely no integrity in all of these so-called blue chip structures like the British royal family or the British Parliament or the European Union or the United Nations. There are no good people. There are no good intentions. Yeah. They're not going to come and save you. They say, we will save you so that no one else can save you. And then when it comes to the day, we won't save you. We're just going to kill you off and steal all your assets and steal your sovereignty and wipe your history from the planet. And then they want to kill 90%, 95% of the planet. And then they want the Chinese to go in and take over, like England. Let's say a city in England or a village in England. And they want to put all Chinese people with all Chinese signs up. And then, you know, if the COVID-19 does cause death, which it doesn't, to take out bloodless bodies, right? So there's no mess, and just burn the bodies. And then the Chinese move in and they write a history saying we've been here for 150 years. That's what they want, right? And they want to kill 95%. And the reason they want to kill 95% is 3.95% of the population was about 1984 figures. 3.95% of the population was not heterosexual. It was lesbian, homosexual, transgender, intersex, bisexual, child sex abuser, and pedophile, right? So what they did from about 1984 is they did a massive advertising campaign bending sexuality, the TV programs, films, products and food, etc. And they wanted to get that not heterosexual up to 5%, right? At the same time, they develop breeding techniques which don't involve the womb. So hence we're now in an area of clones and people advertising it as clones and movies with clones, etc. And so then they want to kill off the rest of the population that's heterosexual and just have these transgenders running the planet. Yeah. Now, if you talk to the police, the worst murder scenes you'll ever go to are done by transgenders. There's just blood everywhere, body parts. It's just absolutely horrible. And they're the biggest mass murderers, the transgenders. And what they're doing all around the world is they're putting transgenders in charge of the national hospitals, especially over this COVID-19, etc., which are empty hospitals now because no one's going to hospital. And the survival rate has gone up worldwide because there's no hospitals, because hospitals are actually killing people. And the person who's in charge of destroying hospitals from being an average place to go to a place to actually get killed en masse and poisoned and given a vaccine that's actually going to kill you. The person who's in charge of that is Heather Simpson, who's transgender. She looks like a Scottish man. And she's the lesbian lover of Helen Clark, right, who looks like Adolf Hitler in trousers, right, and was actually born when he died. And she's a former KGB agent, gangbang prostitute. She sunk the Lermontov, which is a Russian passenger liner, and then sabotaged the rescue mission. Now, Helen Clark was third in charge of the United Nations, went to try and be head of the United Nations and failed because she's just got a face of evil. And so they put her in charge of medics and the medical and dissemination of vaccines, etc., UN Health. Yeah, which is actually UN mass murder, and her lesbian lover is the one who's actually running the hospitals to work against people. And the test run that they did was the Christchurch Mosque massacre. Heather Simpson ran all the hospitals to fake that there were people being shot if no one was shot, right? Yeah. And yesterday, the guy who apparently did the shooting, which was my old gym instructor, he got sentenced to life imprisonment, right?
Without parole.
Without parole, yeah? But the guy they sentenced was not the guy who did the shootings. So you got one actor who's a gym instructor with all the guns, filming himself doing all the shootings. He's a short, stocky, irritating guy. Like he was my gym instructor for about 5 minutes. I just don't want you around, right? And then he does the shooting thing, and then the guy who's sentenced is this skinny guy with a different shaped face with no physical training at all. One guy's buff and, really, really strong. The other guy's just this two-dimensional dweeb. It's a different person. And the person who funded the Christchurch Mosque massacre was New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, and she paid $5.5 million US, I think it was on the 8th of May 2018, to the Clinton Foundation, and actually handed that Hillary Clinton came to New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern got a photo with her, two evils, and then gave her $5.5 million of New Zealand taxpayers' money without any authority from the government, just gave it to her. And then the Clinton Foundation arranged the Christchurch Mosque massacre, and then the day before the massacre, John Podesta comes and says, and gets on the mainstream TV, as a rampant pedophile, and he says, New Zealand is ripe for takeover, right? And then, so they supposedly shoot all these people, and you can see the squabs and the clear tubes going to the squabs, right? And you can see the people who are down and shot, and then they're getting up and walking around, and then they're lying back down and shot again, right? And we did a massive analysis on it. I did 3 videos on it, and for the guy to get shot by the window, the person who did the shooting from outside would have to be 10 feet tall and be able to shoot down like that, at 45 degrees and then at 90 degrees, right?
Yeah.
None of it happened. None of it was real. And they just had squabs all over them. So
what was the point of that?
So the idea was that the Muslim church would get greater rights than the Christian church in New Zealand. And the Muslim religion is all about the men are not allowed to marry until they're 55, right? And when they do marry, they marry an 8-year-old girl, so that's pedophilia, yeah? And in the meantime, the Muslim men can't have sex with women unless they're married, right? And they can't marry an 8-year-old girl until they're 55. So in the meantime, they get sodomized by the older Muslims, right? That's actually what's happening, right? Now, because Jacinda Ardern is transgender, she's promoting the whole pedophilia thing, and her father's a pedophile, right? Jacinda Ardern's father's a policeman, and he takes boys into the bush and rapes them. So they sent him as the ambassador governor to Niue Island, where the natives are quite good looking, but it's out of the way. And then Jacinda Ardern's controller is Helen Clark, right, whose lesbian lover, Heather Simpson, is actually running all the hospital frauds. And they're all working for the UN and the Clinton Foundation, right?
It just goes on and on and on, doesn't it? Hey, we've got to wind it down, my friend. We can chat for hours with this. But
I had nothing to say when I started.
I'm going to put a disclaimer on this one because this is a heavy episode, man.
I've said it all before in other interviews.
I know.
Sir, I've said it all before. It's all up on BitChute. It's all in my previous videos. It's all been said. It's been written. I've done videos on it. I've actually challenged these people to interviews about their pedophilia, about their heroin trafficking, about their murders, and it's gone all around the internet for years, and none of them are challenging me. None of them, right? Because it's true. It's true. It's interrelated, and there were stuff like these people were my neighbours. They tried to kill me, and I can show you how they tried to kill me. And I've published that in books, and they haven't challenged it, and they've just tried to suppress the books. You know?
Yeah. All right. Look, man. Look,
so the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020 is about the European Union taking over the United Kingdom. It is not a withdrawal agreement at all. We need to make it a withdrawal agreement, and the way we're going to do that is I'm going to write a brief statement saying that we're withdrawing from all aspects of all acts out of the European Union, and that anything it does after the 17th of December is not acknowledged. And from 11 p.m. on the 31st of December 2020, the whole United Kingdom and every of its aspects has absolutely nothing to do with the European Union, which is actually a pedophile movement, a private corporation, attempting to do the biggest mafia takeover of an entire nation entirely on paper. That was the experiment. The European Union is an experiment to take over the United Kingdom and all of its sovereignty and all of its assets, only using paper.
It's a very clever move, but that's great. So if you do that, you're going to carry on and finish that, and then we'll get it out to people, and I'll start messaging and answering questions from the public now, saying we're going to be it's like that move from Pulp Fiction in the film.
It is Pulp Fiction, legal fiction. Seems to be a thing.
I'll get that message out. So there's a big protest going on in London this weekend, but what you're saying is it's your name won't be mentioned, but do you think people should still go? What are you thinking? I mean, it's good to get people on the streets so other people can see it, And if it gets on a little bit of mainstream media, the government can see that people are not happy with the situation. I would have thought
that's a good aspect to it. Some of the people who organised it actually sent an assassin to me back in about 2015. Some of the people involved are actually the biggest informed consenters for the multinationals.
It's like everything, there's always going to be agents there, but I think it's good that the British public make more people aware, and they get out on the streets and they have a bit of a shout and they have a demonstration of protest, because I think it's a good thing to do, to vent, to get your aggression and anger out. And let's see where it goes. Let's see who picks up on it. Let's see if it's on the media, if it gets international, because there's a ton of these things going on everywhere at the moment.
Well, it's actually, I encourage it actually, because it's. I've got some meetings afterwards, and this is going to act in my favour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's wind it down, bud. I've got to get this. We'll do this slightly, let it, put the logos on it. We'll get it out to the public, and then we'll talk again in a couple of days to see how you're getting on with the paperwork, so we can start. We'll have to put it somewhere where there's a download. Now that the public know there's a game plan, we have a counteraction to say, go get stuff to Europe. We want nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and we need as many people to sign it and as many people to say it on all forms of media. And the people who don't say that are going to expose themselves as the deep state agents, Data Limited, CLS Group, etc., and Cambridge Analytica. And that's actually about 55% of the alternative media outlets are actually shills and agents and trolls, and they won't be reading it, and they'll then bring into question, why is he doing it? Any form of distraction they can. And the slander of it is actually written here, like I think it's Palm 35. Palm 35 there. It's all the slander that's going to happen against me, and it's happening right now. And it starts, plead my cause. Yeah.
Send me a picture so I can have a look at it. So let's say goodbye. I'll talk to you later. And to all the public watching, thank you so much for going through this video. We veered off the track a bit there, but I think it's important that you know exactly why and how this whole bloodline has become so clouded and muddied.
Yeah.
If you trace back the royal history, as Greg has just been explaining, you'll understand why the claim stands up saying, well, listen, you're not king, you don't have the blood. He said, well, you know what? They don't.
I do have the blood, but my bloodline actually goes back to the last time that they were legitimate, which is about 1533 was the last time they were legitimate, and I go back to that crowning there. And I've just and this dude here, I bought this for 10p on a country lane a couple of days ago, right? And
those books are what most people learn how to read. Those little specialized English books. So we're all, anybody my age, we saw them when we were kids. It was always easy stories to understand. Well, listen, Greg, thank you so much, bud. I'll speak to you very soon. We'll get this out so everybody knows what to do and what's going on. Take care of yourself. I hope you don't overwork, and we'll be back probably tomorrow to have another little chat with you and me. Yeah.
Yep. Good.
Thank you. Good night. No secret signs. This is just a wave. So everybody thinks it's going to be. Bye-bye, Greg.